It's great to have this opportunity to think about the Palm Sunday story whenever you happen to be watching this. I hope this is a helpful way of exploring that together. That particularly important moment in the church calendar, when we remember an event in history, when Jesus with his close followers and a crowd around him rode into Jerusalem on a donkey just a few days before he was going to die. He was not on his own. Many people would have been going to Jerusalem at that time to celebrate the Passover, from the surrounding country, from around the known world, as people flocked together to be united to celebrate that time when God had rescued them from Egypt. Many people would have been going there. They'd have had a long journey. They saw Jerusalem and they rejoiced as they knew their journey had come to the end, and there was this opportunity to come together and to celebrate. It would have been a great moment, a party atmosphere. But suddenly in the middle of that, there's a particular thing to focus on, as we see Jesus riding on this donkey, and as crowds gather, and as they wave palm branches, and as they put their cloaks on the ground in front of him and celebrate him and welcome him as king, and shout, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." There was a sense of excitement, a sense of anticipation, a sense that something exciting was going to happen. And it's great to think about that and to reflect on it and think about what it would have meant to those people in the crowd, to those disciples of Jesus who maybe saw this as the culmination of all they've been working towards with him over the previous 3 years. But we're going to focus on something slightly different today. We're going to focus on what happens next. And we heard this as we read those words from Matthew 21. Because what happens next, according to that account, is that Jesus enters in, but the next thing he does, he goes to the temple, that place of worship, that place that was so central to God's people at that time. And he finds people there doing things that he does not approve of. Those who are changing money, those who are selling doves. And he turns over tables. He stops them selling. He drives them out of the temple court. And they must have thought, what on earth is going on? This is something they've been doing for a long time. It was a necessary service. People, as they travelled maybe hundreds of miles to sacrifice, which they had to do, would not have been able to take animals with them. So they brought money, and when they arrived at the temple, they bought animals, and then they took them in to sacrifice them. They had to pay a temple tax. And the rules said there had to be a very particular currency. Only one particular currency would work. And so they'd bring whatever money they had, they would change it for this money they needed in the temple, and they would take it in and offer it. So these services were necessary. Nobody was disputing that. But the problem that Jesus seems to have with it is where it was taking place. That it was happening in the temple itself, in a way that would stop people coming to worship God. And in some ways, to justify his actions, he quotes from some words by the prophet Jeremiah when he says this. When he speaks about people turning the temple from a place of prayer into a den of robbers. It's been a great shock to them. They'd have got home in the morning thinking, I'm just going to do my normal job. I'll be selling things. I'll be changing money. And suddenly their day is disrupted. Suddenly their very existence and the things that they do and their identity and their job is challenged by this preacher. But then Jesus moves on from there, and he moves into the temple to engage with the people. And he engages with those who are sort of on the edges of society. The blind and the lame. They come to meet him there, he heals them. Children who are regarded as second or third class citizens, people to be ignored, were at the centre of this worship, centre of this praise, centre of this celebration. It would have been an amazing moment. A place and a time when God was present. When God was active in powerful ways. A place when people were healed, when people were blessed. A place and a time when children were recognised and welcomed and brought together. A place when all generations were able to come and to worship God. An exciting time, a vibrant place of worship and blessing. But some did not approve. The religious leaders did not like it. They were sort of indignant. They were upset that the right way of doing things had been interrupted. That the things that they had planned for worship were interrupted by people being healed, by children making a fuss. It was not what they had expected. And then at the end of the story, we find Jesus left them. He went out of the city to Bethany, where he spent the night. In many ways, this is simply a practical statement. Jesus and his followers, there were quite a few of them. Jerusalem was busy. It would have been difficult for them to find a place in Jerusalem where all of them could stay. They had friends outside the city, so they went out and stayed there. But I just wonder whether there's another meaning here as well, that Jesus leaves from a place that he's not welcome. That place that should have welcomed him above all others. That place of worship. That place that God had chosen to dwell in. And he goes out to where he is welcome and among friends. So Jesus is welcomed loudly into Jerusalem. Then he goes into the temple and he makes a big disruption. He's focusing on God and what God is wanting to do. He's seeking to bless people in need and restore them. He's seeking to bring all generations into this act of worship. And it's easy to be critical of the money changers, the dove sellers, the religious leaders, and to think, how on earth could they have got it so wrong, as they had to be displaced, as they objected to what Jesus was doing. But I wonder whether this story has some questions for us to think about, particularly in this time that we are living in. Let me tell some stories of when life was normal, when we just met together. There's a friend of mine who was leading a church down in the south of the country, and one day they had a baptismal service, and they invited many people from the village to come. This person was well known in the village. He had before this he had no church connections, and many people came, and they had a wonderful time. And one person came up to my friend afterwards and said, "That was really good. Is it okay if I come to a regular service?" Because there was this sense that it was for church people and not for other people, that they were not welcome. We hear stories, and some of the work that Lisa does has highlighted this, of people who, instead of finding a church a place of blessing, find it a place of hurt and harm and abuse. We see so much focus among Christians of trying to encourage people to come to church instead of encouraging them to meet with Jesus. And there's this expectation that people need to be well and fixed and sorted and know how to behave before they come into a place of worship, as opposed to feeling that it's a place where they can come and meet with God with all their issues, with all their problems, and find help and blessing. It's a place where all generations are to come together and worship. These are some of the challenges that we as churches face in this country. Last Sunday, when we met together, one of the things we were talking about is some of the barriers that get in the way of people engaging with church. And we were thinking about some of the maybe unintended blocks that we put in people's way. And we're thinking about what changes we need to make it easier for people to come and to meet with Jesus and to be changed and to be blessed. John Swindley talked about the amazing change that we've had in how we do church in the last 2 weeks and the impact that is having. There are many things we miss out on in not being able to physically meet together as a family of God's people. And it'd be great when we are able to do so together again. But we are finding new ways of engaging, new ways of reaching out to people, new ways of being church, new ways of being community, new ways of living as family. And that is wonderful. And we need to continue to explore that and to reflect on it and to see how those ways can continue and grow and expand. The crowds welcomed Jesus. The sick were welcomed and blessed and healed. Children, everybody, you get the idea, was coming together to worship God. Let's think and pray about what we can be doing now so that people in our town can come and meet with Jesus and find blessing and healing and hope and welcome and community and family in him and in his people. And let's think and pray about what we should be doing when we come back together that enables us to continue these new ways of reaching out and sharing and introducing people to Jesus. This time when we're apart is difficult, but it also gives us opportunities to think and to pray and to reflect and to maybe think through some of those questions about what would Jesus displace? What would Jesus want to throw out? What would Jesus welcome? What would Jesus encourage into our church gatherings so that people can meet with him, people can be blessed, people can be encouraged? Are there things? Are there attitudes? Are there ways of living that if Jesus spoke into those, he would say, actually, those need to go. Those need to change. They are getting in the way of people coming to know me. Let's be prepared to listen to that and to say, we will put those down. Are there things that Jesus would look at and say, those are wonderful things that you are doing, wonderful ways in which you are introducing people to me. Continue with them. And let's rejoice in that. And continue to seek to do that to the best of our ability. And are there things that Jesus would say to us and say, actually, these are some new ways in which I want you to open yourselves, I want you to open your hearts, I want you to open your church buildings so that more people can come to know me. Challenges to think about. Challenges to think about. Things to reflect on. As once again we join millions of people around the world in welcoming Jesus. Let's think about ways of which we can encourage others to welcome him too. Thank you, and God bless you.